Welcome to another edition of Between the Sheets with me, James Max. And today I am delighted to welcome talk radio royalty, Mike Graham.
Very kind. Thank you very much indeed. How are you, James?
Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Not at all.
The idea that we've got is to go through the papers because we've got one story which just dominates everything.
Yes.
And whilst we might touch on it, I think we as a nation are beginning to miss some of the other big stories that would normally be dominating all of our conversations.
Yes, absolutely right. And also because of the way that, as you say, the one subject has dominated, we're starting to see it fragment slightly into kind of different areas, so that it might well be about the fact that we're in the midst of a pandemic lockdown. But however, there are other stories which are more interesting because of that.
We should turn our attention to, yes, it is on the front page, but I think it's a story which is along with a whole load of other woke stuff, which I know that some people say, oh, it's a woke agenda, and maybe it's just here to annoy us. But this is the story on the front page of today's Times, which talks about midwives have been told to refer to chest feeding rather than breastfeeding. And I know that it's taking place in an area of Brighton and Hove, which perhaps have a larger trans
That might have something to do with it.
And I know that we could be treading on eggshells. I am sick and tired of people telling me how to think and what words I can use. And if you're that upset about it, then you know what? Close your ears.
I know, exactly.
Because I don't want to upset, by the way, anybody. I don't want to make a pejorative view about anybody and how they live their lives. That's fine.
Yeah.
But please stop telling me which words I can use or not.
Well, I mean, if somebody's breastfeeding a child, surely that's what they're doing. Now, if it happens to be that your breasts are somehow belonging to a man, it doesn't mean they're not breasts, does it? I mean, I'm sorry if I'm confusing the issue here, but if you're breastfeeding a child, that means you have managed to produce milk, which means...
Well, quite, it's a biological fact.
Whether you call yourself a man or a woman is irrelevant. You can't start saying it's chest feeding. It's not. It's breastfeeding.
But isn't this part of the problem? So you have that story, which is one issue, which is another one, and you'll have these people who are arguing, and they can't possibly see that anybody should be offended about anything.
Right.
And I think that we are ending up...
Except they're offended about everything. And the bottom line is, as well, an awful lot of this is done at the behest of people who are not those who are actually affected by it. So that, for example, if it's decided by the hospital, which I think it has been in this case, the hospital is not run necessarily by people who are trans. It's run by people who are worried about trans people being affected and upset. So they don't actually know if that's the case. And it's like a lot of people who come from various different minorities who say, I'm not bothered by that. Why do they have to change the way that people describe it?
It is absolutely...
It's utterly crazy.
How, I mean, look, maybe this has been going on for a long time, and I do seem to remember that all through my life, certain words people have tried to change them, people have tried to connect every different thing to some kind of the past, and their inability to either perform or break through has been because society is against them, as opposed to the fact that they may actually not be any good.
Well, exactly right. And I mean, surely...
Far be it from me to suggest.
Well, you can apply the common sense test, I think, to almost anything, and if it doesn't sound very sensible to change the name of something, because you don't like the name, because it somehow harkens back to a time when people were terribly badly treated or something, it doesn't mean that that actually makes any sense. And chest feeding, if you said to somebody, what do you think that means? I mean, I would have no idea. I mean, for me, it conjures up an image of a zombie eating somebody's chest and then, they die. That's what it sounds like to me. It's not breastfeeding. Breastfeeding you can only do if you have breasts.
Can I anger you further?
Seems to me. Yes, please.
Right, let me anger you further. I should have actually, outside the door of this wonderful studio, we've got some of these little sort of like disposable plastic gloves.
Yes.
I should have brought them in for my handling of The Guardian.
You should have done, yes. Because I may have to tear it up if you put it too close to me. It's a bit like Hannibal Lecter in the cage. Don't let me at it.
London's new landmark commission on diversity in the public realm. Apparently it's not about tearing statues down.
Isn't it?
No.
What's it about then?
I have no idea.
Is it about paying these people? Are these people on the payroll, by the way?
There are 15 people that they've collected.
Yeah.
Most of them come from some particular angle or other.
So a lot of them seem to be attached to theatre in some way.
Yeah, which is fine if...
Well, why? Why is it fine?
Well,
why haven't they asked me? Why haven't they asked you? Why haven't they asked some bloke? Why haven't they asked some bloke? I was born and raised in this town, right?
Me too.
And why have they not asked me instead of some bloke that runs, a travelling theatre company from, Ilford or somewhere?
I do not want London to be cleansed, if you like.
Right.
Of its past. Its past is made up of nasty stories,
of
unpleasant people,
course.
of incredible invention and individuals who, for whatever reason, had sort of almost bipolar, that on one side, incredible brilliance, and on the other side, horrific, personal. I mean, there are so many, things that need to be reflected.
Yeah.
And by all means, if you want to say, let's have some extraordinary people who today are doing wonderful things in London from every race, background, different, brilliant, love it.
Yeah.
But stop washing away the past.
Well, also, you have to wonder about people who are offended by a statue. I mean, statues are part of a particular time. We do still put statues up, but not very often. I mean, I was up in Kenwood the other week, and I was walking around with my daughter, because I used to live up there, and I came across a Henry Moore, right? There's a Henry Moore, and I'd forgotten it's in the middle of sort of the walk around Kenwood,
a glorious
right?
thing.
It's a beautiful thing, right? But I wouldn't ever walk past it and be offended by it, thinking, what the hell is that? What does he mean? What is he trying to contemplate with that? What is he trying to make me think? Now, if it happened to be a statue of Winston Churchill or William Colston, I would think the same. It's part of our history. It's part of what we used to think was a way of commemorating people. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. If you don't like the bloody statue, just walk past it.
I do find it extraordinary that we have allowed ourselves to start cleansing history, and also allowing ourselves to think that the colonial past. So as far as I'm concerned, people look at me and they might go, well, James, you're very white and middle class.
Yeah.
When all that was going on, my lot were in Russia and Poland and in Eastern Europe and all that business. It has nothing to do with me.
Right.
And I don't see why somebody like me should be targeted from getting jobs or having a viewpoint or whatever it may be on the basis of a history of a nation. I want to know about that history because I would like it to never happen again.
Sure. And that's how you ensure that it doesn't happen, by making sure that you know about it.
Exactly. And I also want to understand how we can learn from the Victorian period where, yes, they did some fairly horrendous things in order to get their money, but my goodness me, they put a lot of money into the most extraordinary resources that we are still using today.
One of them, as I've mentioned before on various different shows, is Thomas Guy, who is currently boxed in, not a million miles away from this very office. And this is the bloke who, while he had some maybe dodgy antecedents as far as some people are concerned, built effectively Guy's and St Thomas's Hospital here in London, which are two of the foremost hospitals in the country. And his reasoning for building them was to help the poor make sure that they didn't die of terrible diseases. I mean, he was a philanthropist. Now, you might say, well, he also had connections, and I think the connections are such that he made financial gains by selling, I think it was the South Sea Bubble Company shares at the time, which was thought to be involved in slavery. But it doesn't make him a slave driver. He wasn't sort of, whipping people on a boat or anything like that.
Well, quite. And the thing is that if you look too closely at history, if you look too closely at anybody who's made a lot of money, chances are there is an aspect to it which is slightly less than fragrant.
Yes, I know. And there are plenty of people in this society in which we live who would now take any money that you made and make sure that you gave it to somebody else. I mean, like these idiots who say, well, how much money is enough money? Well, what's it got to do with you? If Jeff Bezos wants to make hundreds of billions of pounds a year in order to build a weird-looking clock in the desert, that's up to him. He's earned it, hasn't he?
Well, exactly. Let him get on with it. I would like to cancel Sadiq Khan, though.
I'd like to cancel him altogether.
He really is annoying me.
Yeah, he's very annoying. And this whole project of his shows precisely what is wrong with him as the Mayor of London, because he's only the Mayor of what he sees as his London. And I always say about people like him, he's only the custodian of London. He does not run London, he does not own London. He is occupying a political seat as the man who runs London. He doesn't run it very well. He wastes a lot of our money.
I don't think he understands what London is in a broader sense.
No.
As you say, he might understand his London.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to understand different people's London. But London is arguably the most international city in the world. It's the most historic city. It's the most tradable city. But you have to respect its past, even if you don't like it.
Yes, because it's changed over the years as a result of the way that it is. Some of the changes haven't been great. Some of them have been fantastic. I grew up in London when it was a lot less busy than it is now, when there were a lot fewer people than there are now. But with all the people that have come and all the different restaurants that have opened, it's been fantastic.
It's an amazing place.
And you cannot artificially change that. You just can't.
Beautiful segue into tourists. Tourists are in the news.
Yes.
So tourists may face 10 years in jail for lies about travel. I understand the need to be heavy-handed on the basis that you can go on the train or the tube and you're told to wear a face covering and people don't.
Yes.
I mean, I just find that astonishing.
Supposedly, I haven't been in the tube for a long time because I stopped using it. But
I was on it today.
But I'm told that they were for a while anyway. They were enforcing the use of masks. Have they stopped again now?
I don't know, but today, every time I've used it, there will at least be one person in the carriage who is not, and given that there were 3 people in the carriage today, one of them was not wearing.
And how do you know he doesn't have an exemption, or she doesn't have an exemption?
She didn't have anything there. She didn't look as if she really cared.
Right.
She gave me the evils when I gave her the evils.
What have we become? I mean, the last time
what have we become?
One of the last times that I went on the tube, it was when the restaurants were still open, because I was going out for dinner to Waterloo. Got on the tube from where I live on the Jubilee line. On the way to dinner, everyone had a mask on. On the way home from dinner, nobody did. And so that tells you a lot, I think.
I think it does, and I think we've ended up in a very strange place where the government is desperately trying to play catch up. Our dear friend Captain Hindsight has been very quiet recently, with little view. Matt Hancock seems to be creating problems for himself with this thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know where this 10-year sentence came from, but I mean, we looked at some of the other things you could be done for 10 years, and it includes things like riot, you know, poisoning people, you know, assaulting somebody. I mean, just ludicrously grooming children for sex. I mean, horrible crimes.
Even worse. Everybody knows they're either not going to enforce it or not going to be able to enforce it on the basis that they've said, well, everybody's checked when they come back. We know that people are going through the airports. There are no temperature checks. There are no social distancing measures that are being policed. There are no enforcement measures for people when they come back, and they're relying on the goodwill of the British people. If you're asking people to do goodwill, you've got to make it simple. Make it simple, make it clear.
And just say, look, you can't go anywhere. But here's one for you, right? And I meant to ask this question earlier to Simon Calder. On last weekend, when the South African ban was imposed, or when it was first brought in, a plane flew overhead, right? And so one of my kids has got the app where you see.
Yes, I love that, and you can see what the plane is and where it came from.
And do you know what plane it was?
It was probably from South Africa.
It was a BA flight from Johannesburg to London, right? Now, which of course set off a whole chain of events. We were like, well, it could be an empty plane. It could be flying cargo. It could be flying essential people from South. But all I can say is that the ban on planes from South Africa clearly isn't working, because here's a plane from South Africa arriving in London.
But you see, that was also. Work? But then you had the interview with the people who had come back from South Africa because they'd heard about the ban, various things, and they said we were expecting to be checked and to have various.
And they never are.
And they never are. And to me, this is just another illustration of we have these measures, and I kind of want to support them because at some point, there must be some scintilla of advice that says that this is a good thing. You have a look at New Zealand, which is arguably one of the best countries for having handled this.
Yes.
Within New Zealand, they are going to events. The summer is there. They're out and about. Except, interestingly, not a single bit of vaccine rollout. So they're all getting upset about the fact that they've got no vaccine.
They've got no vaccine?
No vaccine yet.
But they have no COVID.
Completely messed it up.
But they don't have any COVID.
But they've shut the borders.
Right. Also, nobody goes to New Zealand. I mean, as I said once to Piers Morgan, there's more people living in my street than live in New Zealand.
Well, there are 5.5 million people in New Zealand.
Yeah, that's about the same as Scotland, and it's about 58,000 times
bigger.
It's
a lovely place. Apparently not been.
No.
Anyway, so back to Matt Hancock.
Well, I think it was Mae West who once said that it's about the size. She went to Auckland once. It's about the size of Queen's Cemetery and twice as dead.
Right. On that piece of casual abuse.
For the teenagers.
Quite. On that piece of casual abuse. So, look, Matt Hancock here, I just take the view that this is too much, too late.
Yes. It is too much too late. I mean, you and I both were calling for this, I think, about a year ago.
Yes.
Because I kept saying to people, well, hang on a minute. If we're trying to stop people from coming into the country with this terrible disease, why are we still getting flights from Tehran, which was one of the hotspots, northern Italy, where we know everybody's got it, and China?
Quite.
And I mean, the answer I got was, well, there's no point in trying to stop international travel when we've already got the virus. Now we're told you have to stop international travel because you might bring in a variant of the virus. Well, hang on. There's a variant of the virus in Bristol, and there's one in Kent. Now, I'm all for walling up Bristol and not letting anybody travel out of it, but I don't think it's practical.
For different reasons, obviously.
But
I don't understand, though, why we've allowed ourselves to get into this place where you're absolutely right. We have these conversations. It seems sensible to bring in certain measures. So if they'd said, shut the borders, keep schools open.
Yeah.
If they'd said, shut universities to everything but online tuition, keep the students at home, stop them running up big bills, and we'll reduce the thing. You know what it's come down to? It's money.
Yes.
It's money because flights internationally and the pressure was huge. Universities, the money coming in, the pressure was huge. We have made some terrible mistakes off the back of money, combined with the fact that we've probably exacerbated the economic damage that hits the mass of population.
It's the worst of all worlds, isn't it? That's the problem. So it's
if
not
something will
lockdown.
save lives, I will do it.
Yes.
If it's stupid politicking, so like this policy here, so they haven't really brought it in properly.
No.
So they've got this
it's still
list
not
of
coming in
countries.
until next week. So I mean, you're all right for a while.
So they've got this, and then they've got this list of countries where they say it's bad, but you could still go via another country and come in. I mean, the whole thing is a mess.
It is. And I mean, I was listening to another piece of news this week where they said that of all the fines that were handed out, for breaking COVID rules, you know how many people have actually paid up?
Probably none.
5. Seriously.
I mean,
5 people have actually paid a fine. Obviously, the most stupid people you could ever encounter, because everybody else is either challenging them, ignoring them, or throwing them in the bin.
Well,
5 people.
5 people. I mean, do you think that the people, particularly the celebrities who have broken the rules, should be paying the price? So, for example, in the papers today, you'll see that Rita Ora is there. It looks like ITV, although they had to leave her in The Masked Singer because it was all pre-recorded. I mean, they could have got rid, but they chose not to. But she's not going to be picked for the next one. I think that the level at which she went to have her party and
Do you
to
mean
try
to
and keep
take
it
out
secret.
the CCTV?
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, there was intent there. She knew it was wrong. It wasn't just a mistake.
Yeah.
The restaurant owner was taking the money. Again, it was all about money. And I'm rich, therefore I don't have to play by the rules.
Well, apparently she's, I think, now currently in Australia, and she's in quarantine because when you fly into Australia,
Yes, she is.
you don't have any choice. So it's rather ironic that that's where she's ended up. I mean, I don't like to particularly castigate people for going against rules which are, to all intents and purposes, in some cases, as you say, just cosmetic. It turns out, so as far as I know, and I have no personal knowledge of this, but people tell me that they know of lots of people having sort of, house parties, little, disco parties going on all over the place, people getting their hair cut. I mean, where are all these people on TV? You see my hair, where are they all getting their hair cut?
I don't know.
Footballers, right? Every football match you see, it looks as if they've got a new haircut from last week.
Yes.
Who's doing that?
Very, very good point.
I mean, there's a lot of it going on.
There's a lot of it going on.
And I think, as I'm, without wishing to suggest that that's what you should do, I'm reluctant to criticise people who do it.
Aren't we nice? Meanwhile, Mumsnet has got all excited about Matt Hancock.
This one has absolutely thrown me, right? This came out the other day. Apparently Mumsnet, which is a very odd place, not a place I go to on any regular sort of basis, I want you to know. It turns out that they were all debating whether or not Matt Hancock was gorgeous. Now, there are lots of words you could use about gormless, I might say, but gorgeous? No.
He's a little bit like the prefect at school that you didn't respect because he was just a bit too rule by the rules
and also
a bit too...
And I mean, I don't wish to in any way have a go at his appearance, but he looks puny. Puny is not a good thing to be.
Oh.
Don't you think?
I don't really care. I haven't really
You don't
thought
care.
about it.
You haven't thought of his puny looking.
Not really.
But he looks more like Clark Kent than Superman. Let's put it that way.
That's true.
That's kind of what I mean.
Right.
And he clearly is a guy.
Sure where you were going with
he's
that.
a guy who thinks of himself differently than the way everybody else thinks. We all know someone like this, right? He looks in the mirror. He doesn't see Matt Hancock. He sees somebody completely different. He was on the front of the Telegraph today. As if he was
He's no Joe Root, is he?
No, he's no Joe Root. As if he was in a movie, right? He obviously thinks of himself as a very top player in a very top drama.
He is in a movie.
Well,
it will be turned into
the
most tragic disaster movie of all time.
Yeah.
And his part will be played.
Well, he's already revealed, hasn't he, that one of the reasons for his policies being what they are is he watched Contagion. And you go, what I said was, I'm glad he didn't watch Outbreak, because that's where they dropped the bomb on the village where the disease came from, right? Which would be bad news for Wuhan. But here's a guy who clearly thinks of himself as this kind of, super geek. And apparently he's very popular in Downing Street. I'm told by people that I talk to there.
It's because of the vaccine rollout that he's got that, and he is also...
but they think he's got a big brain. They think he's got a huge brain.
Oh, he's not that bright.
He really isn't.
I mean, he's not as stupid as some other people who are in power.
Well, let me put it this way. When he started to do his little analogy about Newmarket, when he said, I'm from Newmarket, I know a thing or two about horse racing, and then he said he was backing both horses, and I went, you don't know a thing or two about horse racing, because if you only got 2 horses in a race, if you back both of them, you're never going to win.
That's a very good point. Right.
Anyway, that's Matt Hancock dealt with.
Meanwhile...
Yes.
Why do we never hear about good Brexit news?
Well, that's because the media, apart from Talk Radio, of course, and maybe 1 or 2 other outlets which you can find online, don't like the fact that Brexit is actually going quite well.
Because on occasion, it will go wrong. And I would all of it.
It will go wrong in the same way that life goes wrong.
Yeah.
In the same way that things were not perfect before we had Brexit. I mean, what are they going to do when there's for example, President Macron decides to ban all French lorry drivers from re-entering France? which was the biggest own goal until Ursula von der Leyen actually made out that she wouldn't buy any vaccines at all for the European Union, and she tried to stop us from having any as well. You know, they've made a complete cock-up of everything in the EU, which I'm very glad we've left it.
Every time I hear a story, it makes me realise that we have to be not only more aware of what's going on, we have to be far more alert to the global opportunities that are there. And I think the one person who's going to come out of all of this really well is Liz Truss.
I agree with that. I think she's doing brilliantly, and she's kind of working behind the scenes. And every so often you see this story pop up that she's done another trade deal.
She has.
Who's she done it with this time?
So this time now, setting aside the fact that we have won the test match, and I mentioned Joe Root earlier.
Yes.
Won the test match in India. She's also done a trade deal with India. So a major investment by an Indian tech firm. They're going to put 1,500 jobs into the UK. So that takes away, you know, the 1,500 jobs. If you lost them from JD Sports and Didums, I mean, which is only a threat, by the way, these jobs are coming in, and this is one of many where we're seeing these trade deals with countries all around the world who are like, we want to do a deal with Britain.
Yes, and also if
we don't care about the rest of Europe. People worry about the financial sector. The financial sector only bothered from Europe, having worked with it, because they wanted access to the UK to give them access to the rest of the global markets, of particularly New York and particularly Singapore.
Right. Well, this is the thing. I mean, we had a story, I think, last week about how something like 75% of exports to the EU from this country have been affected by Brexit badly. However, what they didn't say was how much money that was, and because I'm told, and you'll know better than me, most companies in this country do not actually do much business with the EU. Most of it is with other parts of the world, like America, China, now India probably as an emerging
Where they do
nation.
business with the EU is that they buy stuff from them.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you want to sell us your stuff?
Right. Well, this is what I've always said. You know, why are you really going to tell me that Veuve Clicquot isn't going to want to sell champagne to Britain? You know, that Mercedes...
I am very happy.
Yes.
If they don't want to, fine. There is plenty of good English fizz.
There certainly is.
It's beautiful stuff.
And listen, but I'm very much an internationalist when it comes to drink. I mean, I'll take it from anywhere. As far as I'm concerned, if you produce something that I want to drink, I'm buying it. I don't care if there are tariffs. I don't care if there are problems. I don't care if I have to order it personally to be delivered in a brown box to my door. I'm importing it.
Now, where would you like to go next?
Well, we've been talking about a great many things. How about this ridiculous story which popped up about food? Wheater beans, right? Apparently, according to a piece in one of the papers this morning, Weetabix put out a picture of Weetabix, which many people eat in many different ways. I don't know whether you're a 2 or 3 Weetabix a day man.
When I'm defatting, I try and do a 2.
Do you? I'm not a fan of Weetabix because I find it a bit
them?
too filling. No, I'm very much more of a kind of porridge individual. But here's what they've done, and I think it does look quite horrifying, and people got quite horrified. They've put baked beans on Weetabix. Now, I mean, I'm not a massive fan of baked beans, really.
What?
No, not really. I mean,
I love a baked bean.
There's only really one thing I will eat baked beans with, right?
What's that?
And that's shepherd's pie. I think it goes
What
incredibly
about sausage?
well. Well, no, maybe.
What about fried eggs and an English breakfast?
I don't like it with beans. English breakfast should never have chips, and it should never have beans, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm
more of a Scottish breakfast.
That's close to
I'm more of a Scottish breakfast: black pudding, haggis, bacon, and sausage.
But meanwhile, whoever did the PR for this is a genius.
Yes,
because we've now seen which companies are prepared to get involved in some good, what I would describe as quality bans in response to this. So, for example, Weetabix said, why should bread have all the fun when there's Weetabix serving up Heinz UK beans on Bix for breakfast with a twist? Fine, they put the picture out. But Lidl have replied and said, babe, you okay? You hardly touched your Weetabix and beans. The NHS replied that tweet should come with a health warning.
Jesus.
Jesus
they've got something
replied.
better to do. Aren't the NHS being overwhelmed by people with COVID? I mean, what the hell are they doing playing around with Weetabix on
Meanwhile,
Twitter?
well, possibly. Specsavers replied, removes glasses, puts on blindfold. West Yorkshire Police, obviously, because they're very busy.
Because they're not busy at all.
Even though this is criminal, please don't ring us to report it.
I mean, I don't want a police force to have a sense of humour. I'm terribly sorry. I think that's beyond the pale.
Oh.
I do.
Oh.
You know, I'm not interested in what some police Twitter
How about Virgin
account...
Atlantic? They're not doing much at the moment.
Well, that's fine. They can be funny, but not the cops.
Okay. That doesn't fly with us, they say.
That's all right.
That's all right.
I tell you what, I've eaten a lot worse on a Virgin flight.
However, wow. Meanwhile, Tesco, I quite like their response.
Go on.
Illegal combination in the bagging area. How about this? This is fantastic. A streaker who ran across a pitch at the US Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They claim to have won $374,000.
Goodness me.
By betting on the stunt. They bet that there would be a streaker.
Right.
They were the streaker. They were arrested. They had to pay $500 as a fine. They obviously had to, pay for the however much it was, and then they've made off like a bandit.
Isn't that against the rules of gaming? Because I'm pretty sure that if you do that kind of null and voids the bet.
There's a streaker.
Because do you remember the goalkeeper for the very small? I think might have been Sutton. It was a kind of non-league football club who somehow was famous for eating a pie, and there was a big sort of FA Cup clash, and one of the Premier League teams was coming down, and somebody like one of the big betting companies, I won't name them because I get it wrong, bet that he would eat a pie during the televising of the game, right? And sure enough, he did. And then it turned out that he'd been put up to it, and not only did he not win any money, he lost his job because he was seen to be somehow interfering with what you might call due process.
Well, you just ruined my ability to make you some money.
Well, no.
I mean, there was I thinking we've got the Six Nations coming up.
You want to watch me
Who better
streak?
Who better to do a streak than you? I mean, that would get the front pages.
The thing is, there's nobody there, though. I mean, at least the Super Bowl had 30,000 people watching it. I mean, if you go to the England-Scotland game...
yeah, exactly. Global audience on television.
Yeah.
What a good place to go and do your streak.
Yeah, well, it might help England to actually win a game, I suppose.
Might host some profile as well,
You
know.
never
You could do a bit of that.
My profile is high enough without me showing my naked body to everybody and ruining it for them all. I mean, can you imagine? Talk about ruining somebody's breakfast. That would certainly be the end. If I was ever going to do something like that, it would have been when I was much younger.
Yeah.
I think.
Mike Graham naked. On that bombshell, I think we leave
another one for Mum's Net.
Yeah. I think that's another one for the therapy session.
Indeed.
There we go. Mike Graham from Talk Radio. Thank you so much for joining us once again. We will be back again with some more Between the Sheets with me, James Max, very soon.